It's by far the most misused medigun in the game, and it's not even close. Now, people have theory crafted the proper way to use it, but none of them match reality, because the quick fix has to be used with a different mindset than stock, crits, or the vaccinator. But of course, we must first look at its stats. It's tradition. The first stat to take note of is arguably the best stat on it, that being the 40% increased heal rate, which brings it from 24 health per second up to 33.6. This is fairly huge and ensures that you can distribute healing across your team quickly to get them back into the fight. The next stat to look at is the 10% increased Uber charge rate, which, contrary to popular belief, isn't really that beneficial of a stat. Sure, on paper, getting Uber 4 seconds sooner sounds like a nice bonus. However, in reality, an Uber is almost never spontaneously used the second it's available. Often you'll be sitting with the Uber for a few seconds while you coordinate a push with your team. Next, the true downside of the quick fix. The 50% less overheal. It's pretty brutal, especially for light classes, where they're much more susceptible to burst damage. Heavier classes are impacted less, but it's still felt, though it is a bit of a positive because the quick fix will rarely receive the overheal Uber penalty. And now for the most fun stat, the blast jump mirroring. It's really fun to pull off. Sure, it can easily get you killed, but with the right amount of coordination, you can use it to pull off insane plays and even save yourself from a dangerous situation. That being said, use it in moderation. Now, for the most contentious part of the weapon, the Uber charge. With it, your heal rate is tripled to 100.8, and you are rendered immune to all sources of knockback. The knockback immunity is quite useful and will let you maintain a position with confidence. And though the rapid healing is not invulnerability, it can certainly turn the tide of battle, not to mention that it does heal yourself as well, so you don't have to worry about coming out of an Uber still damaged. Now, with the stats out of the way, let's take a look at some of the common ways the Uber is misused. The biggest misuse is being Ubered and just walking into the enemy. It's by far the most common way people take a dirt nap while charged, so you need to remember, you're not invincible. So don't walk into the entire enemy team. You won't have enough healing or a big enough health buffer to survive. This applies to anything really, be it a sentry or a heavy or just being severely outnumbered. 9 times out of 10, it'll fail. The second way people misuse it is overextending, or just being too aggressive in general. The Uber requires a lot more careful positioning than the others, so you should think about it first, and pre-plan your route, and make sure that you have an escape lined up if things change. And the third common mistake is ditching your medic. With other Ubers, this is generally okay, or even a good thing to keep him out of danger with the other Ubers, but for the quick fix, all you're doing is focusing the enemy solely onto you, and as said previously, you won't have the healing to survive being reckless. So instead, make sure your medic is always nearby while Ubered, so that the damage can be distributed between you both. So, where does that leave the quick fix to shine? Multiple situations actually. The first of which, and is the best, is flanking and ambush. With the quick fix Uber, you can drop in, take out your big threats, and manage the rest of the team with your pocket. The rapid healing goes a long way in keeping you alive, and the knockback immunity ensures that your path will never be disrupted. Get in, pick the big threats off, and get out. That's the name of the game with this strategy. Another place the quick fix shines is enhancing a team push. Unlike an Uber, you can't really push on your own, but paired with a team backing you in your pocket, you can greatly tip the scales in your favor. This does require a bit more coordination, however, it does pay off. And third, the Uber shines as a counter push. If a lot of enemy is coming your way, or they have an Uber of their own, the quick fix can level the field with surprising efficacy. Granted, you will still need to practice discretion in how you use it, but it can turn a lost fight into a stalemate. With the major points out of the way, here's a few tips, pointers, do's, and do-nots that you should keep in mind while using this undervalued unlock. The first of which is who you should be Ubering. The name of the game with the quick fix is mobility and moderation, so let's go through all of the classes real quick and evaluate them. Scout is a perfectly serviceable pocket. His mobility is very high, which can make it a bit hard to keep track of him, and he does lack sustained damage, but he can be a useful pocket for when you want to pick off a couple targets. Soldier is one of your best pockets. He's got good health, and he can blast jump for you for a surprise attack and a fast escape. He has good damage, the only downside is he is a little bit slow. Pyro is a pretty good pocket as well, which may be surprising. He has decent damage and serviceable mobility, but his flanking style complements the quick fix. The flames are disorienting, and his unlocks make him a whole lot better at it. Villaman is tied with Soldier for pocket ability. He's got more speed but less health, and his blast jumps are a bit more restrictive, but he can do big damage and be far more aggressive under your wing. Heavy is a pretty poor pocket, in most cases with the quick fix. Sure, he performs great with health and damage, but he's just too slow to evade incoming damage. Heavy can definitely work in some cases, but in most, he underperforms. Engineer is an option, pretty much a slower scout, though certain unlocks make him a pretty viable pocket. But in most cases, he's better left to tend to his buildings and move that gear up during your push, anyways. And as for Medic, Sniper, and Spy, they're all pretty bad choices for fairly obvious reasons. Pocket them if you feel like messing around, but it won't get you far otherwise. Now the second tip is who your biggest threats are. Again, this will be a class-by-class basis. Scout isn't that big of a threat on his own. He can do some good chips, but generally he can be thrown off of your movement. And anyways, he'll probably focus other people instead. Soldier, he's a moderate threat. His rockets are dangerous, but he can be fairly easily avoided if you're even okay at dodging. Pyro is a big threat. In most cases, Pyros will panic air blast you and do nothing. But if a Pyro decides to flame you down, you're going to have to prioritize them immediately, since the flames do pretty good damage and can hit both of you. Villaman is also a fairly big threat because of his burst potential, but reliance on projectiles makes him manageable in most cases. Heavy is a lot like Soldier in threat assessment. He can do good damage, but he's easy to avoid. Engineer is a decent threat with his sentries, as they can easily overpower your healing if you attack them wrong, so try to use caution and take buildings out smartly. Medics are naturally a non-threat, unless one feels like rushing you down for a melee swing. In most cases, they won't, though. Sniper and Spy are fairly big threats. They can do large bursts of damage and instantly put an end to your push. You'll have to be diligent about them, and try to avoid taking them on. Another tip. There is a large misconception that the quick fix Uber is good for mass healing a team, but this really isn't the case. This more or less wastes an Uber to save a few seconds of downtime. It can work in some cases, but in general, flashing Ubers isn't a great idea. Instead, find a pocket and push with your team instead. Overall, the biggest thing you can do though to extend the utility of your Ubers is positioning. You want to be close enough to your pocket that you sponge some of the damage they take, but not too close that splash damage will hit the both of you. You'll have to feel it out in-game and reposition frequently to get the maximum effect. But when you pull it off, it comes pretty close to being invulnerable. Oh, and one final tip. You'll want to time your panic Ubers to be a bit early, since you'll need time to recover health. But all in all, the quick fix is a powerful medigun that is often overlooked, since it has to be used with far more finesse than its contemporaries. Use it right, and it'll treat you well and take your team to victory. Just keep in mind where it falls short, and plan accordingly. Is it the best? No, but it's a load of fun and it gets the job done.